And the other thing you'll want to do is you want to make sure that you also create ones which might be responsive. This means that you might want to create one ready for a tablet or a mobile phone. Let's take a look at how we can quickly do an example of a mobile responsive design for the homepage, because I think that would be useful just so that the user or the person viewing this wireframe gets a better representation of how the design adapts when you go down to a smaller screen size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a label here for mobile version. And what I want to be able to do is create a slightly smaller width. It'll be what you would expect for a mobile phone, so it'll probably be a lot longer than the actual homepage, and we'll probably have to add slightly different elements. In this case, the very first element that we want to do when we're doing a mobile responsive design is a button for the menu and a second button for an interaction, usually to call the service or business, or maybe to email them or something like that. We'll add the logo in the middle here because it'll probably be very small. We'll have to make sure it has enough room. And we'll still draw that little square in the background to represent the slider image, which will be a lot smaller. Sometimes you don't even have sliders on the mobile version, and you just have a single image. Let's put some markup here to represent what each one of these items are. And in this case, it'll just be the mobile button, which will expand out the mobile menu, as well as the phone number or mobile number, depending on what it is. Let's draw out an L just there to represent the logo and have a look at creating our next section here. Our next section was an intro section, which had an image, it had a title, a description, and a button. Now, since we don't have that same wide angle that we do on a desktop, we really have to collapse this down to a single column and row. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to rearrange some of the content so it makes a bit more sense. Sometimes people put the image first, but there's no context to that. So what you want to do in this case is put the title with a description in first, and then the image can follow this. These will all be collapsed down to a single column so that they fit in nicely, and they'll flow on based on the information that they provide. Let's actually copy out an arrow to show that this is the responsive version of this same content. When we go to a responsive version, we usually make the margins from the top to the bottom a bit smaller, as well as the font size and the image is a bit smaller. So as you can see, this section is almost the same size as the previous section. But obviously this might work differently in practice. It depends on how you're arranging the content. The next section here was the sponsors section. And when we're collapsing down this section, since the sponsors already are quite small, we'll actually be able to fit about 2 in on the mobile design. If you were to go up to a larger size, maybe a tablet view or something like that, maybe you could even expand them out to 4 or 6 items per row. But in this case, we'll just stick it in with 2 items, or in this case, maybe 3 items. I don't know, 3 looks like it's just barring the edge of what's possible, but at least it doesn't make this section too large. Finally, let's take a look at the last section here, which is the footer. And for the footer, yes, the contact us form is a little bit in the way, so let's move that out of the way. And let's create out this footer. Now, since this footer actually does have quite a lot of content, it's probably going to take up a lot more space. The very first thing here we'll want to add in is our contact us form. So let's represent that with a title, a few inputs, a text box, and a button. And after we create this, we can move on to the sitemap. And this will be the next main column here that we want to provide. And this column will, again, have more or less the same information. We could even copy paste it across. And sometimes you might not even want to have so many items, or you might hide out one of the columns if you don't want to use them. But in this case, I do want to use them. So I'm just going to create this next section here as a sitemap. So let's put in a header section here to represent that. And let's put in a few lines here to represent the menu items for that sitemap. And finally, let's create our last section here, which will be for the logo and the contact information. So in this case, since we're in a mobile design, we could make the logo here for this footer section full width, or we could make it half width, and we can create icons here for the phone number and the email. And that finalizes our mobile design. We now have our home page with a mobile version, our features page, and our contact us page. And these are the basic building blocks to create out the rest of the website. I've done lots of wireframes in the past. Sometimes I just simply use a piece of paper and pen to create them, whereas other times I might create something in Figma or a third-party tool. But the goal here isn't to essentially use a certain tool to do it. It's more about creating a simple view for yourself and the client to present as a plan of what you're building for your next website or